This is The Basketball Show with Shane the Hammer Hill. What they gonna say next?
Yes, the voice of Rodney O. Love your work. This is The Basketball Show. It's all thanks to TCL Mobile, 2K23 and UPCOZ. I am Joe. This is Shane the Hammer Hill. If you didn't already know that and have been living under a rock. Hammer,
and you are back.
I know I've missed you. How you doing?
I've missed you, but we've followed you. Geez, unbelievable. You got to talk to us. You got to rank, not what wines you drank, but what events you went to.
Tequila. Sorry, what?
Yeah. So we're at the golf. Talk to us. Come on.
Was very lucky to get over to the States. So was in Phoenix. Went to the Waste Management, the Phoenix Open. Went to the Super Bowl.
Did you see any golf?
Yes.
Okay.
Followed around Jason Day, John Rahm. It was a lot of fun. Phoenix Open, known as the party tournament. The weather was amazing. The vibes were great. So that was awesome. Super Bowl was excellent. An amazing game. Halftime performance was excellent. Cam, Liana, the whole SEN crew, Ballpark, those guys. It was a lot of fun. And then had to knuckle down and work. Went up to Salt Lake City for NBA All-Star Weekend, which was
you
fantastic.
Would have been the only one working. No one else works there. There's just that fluff.
There was plenty of people working.
You didn't enjoy the game though. It's fluff, right?
I will admit I didn't watch a lot of the game. Yeah. This is the tiny bit that I did watch. There was a lot of networking. I was busy, as I said, working, but it was so much fun. The energy was awesome. This is just across the whole weekend. So sat down with Josh Giddey, who's, as we know, is having an excellent season. He's just so fantastic, representing Australia. Luka Doncic, the media scrum around some of these big superstars was unbelievable. Couldn't believe it. KD, of course. Somebody asked him, because there's media from all over the world, somebody asked him who he would want to be paired with if there was a zombie apocalypse. I'm not joking. He looked at this person and just shook his head. I'm sorry, I'm not wasting my time.
Hey, what about Josh Giddey though with his fashion? Jeez, he stepped that up.
There's a bit of a Shea influence there, I think. Giannis, of course, animated as ever. So that was so much fun. And then after All-Star Weekend, Mo King over there as well, playing in the Rising Stars game, and then obviously the G League Ignite game. He is looking so much more comfortable.
That's good.
As a player and a person. He's bulked up a little bit as well. Looks really happy. And then I stopped in LA on the way back. This is the guys filming the podcast, All the Smoke. Do you recognise any of those people?
Well, I don't have my glasses on, but that's Steve Jackson, right?
It is Steve Jackson. It is Matt Barnes and Isaiah Thomas. Well, I actually caught up with him, and he had this special message for you.
Shane, my brother, where are you? Somewhere around this world. I need to see you. We need to get to a bar. We got a lot of stories, a lot of time to catch up. And guess what? I think we need to come to Australia and shoot all the smoke. Maybe you can get the guys together. You can get Jordan, Andrew Gage. You can get Matty Nielsen. Get a couple guys. We'll sit down and have a good time, man. But I miss you, bro. I'm looking forward to talking to you soon. And, let's check in, man. I miss you, boy. Peace.
How good is that?
What a champion.
Yeah,
he was only a baby when he came.
He said that.
Got injured and took him under my wing, and he was a champion.
He told me a couple of stories that I'm not allowed to repeat on this program.
Okay. You'll have to remind me of those.
But yeah, really, really cool, great trip all in all, but happy to be back as well. Also shout out to Nick Popovich, who I saw in LA. He's working with the women's basketball program at USC, so gave me a tour of the grounds and the facilities, which are amazing.
Bloody champion. There for the championships at the Sydney Kings.
He's a great guy.
Good on you, mate.
It was so good. It was so good. And also Jackie Dover I saw over there as well. First female referee in the NBL. She is shooting her shot in America. She's aiming for the NBA.
Yes.
And just such a legend. So that was
Aim
great
high,
too.
young lady. Aim high.
Exactly
Go
right.
for it.
Alrighty, plenty to get through on the show. Let's get into it. Let's talk NBL. We'll get to the Grand Final series shortly with D-Ruck with some good old-fashioned analysis. But first, some coaches on the move, Hammer. Simon Mitchell and Southeast Melbourne parting ways in this past week. I feel for him. It's been a tough run, especially this past year with injuries.
Yeah, I think the timing's probably right, but both parties handled it with class, as you would expect, with Tommy Greer and also Simon Mitchell. 4 years is probably long enough with the teams that they've had. Probably all would have expected to maybe go a little bit further, but you're right, they had a terrible run with injuries this year. They got themselves right and then bombed out probably a little bit earlier than what they would have hoped this year. But, I think I'd like to see him as a lead assistant somewhere else. For a period of time, and then I think when one of the new teams comes in, I think he'll pick up another head coaching job at some stage.
Yeah,
and he'll
let's
be
hope
better
so.
for it. He'll be a better coach the next time than what he was this time.
Let's hope so. Hope he lands on his feet. Melbourne United have lost a good one as well.
They have DMAC going north. That's a great pickup for Justin Schuller, and I think when you know somebody, you trust them, you've got somebody that was a legend as a player and has that voice with the players. Really, really good signing. Well done to DMAC for being able to travel north.
In terms of where the Bullets have been this past 12 months or so, are they making all the right moves now? Do you see that it will be sort of rectified immediately?
Well, past 6 years, really, isn't it? How many?
Yeah, I guess so.
How many times
it's
have
not
they
been great.
won the wooden spoon in their 6 or 7 years back? It's, they need a new start, and I think they're pulling the right chords at the moment, but a lot to see in free agency and what they get done. But even listening to Justin last week, he was really good. He was really defined and knew exactly what he wanted and the vision they have to be able to take the next step. So we'll see.
We've got to talk about the Boomers very quickly. Pumped Kazakhstan again. They'd already qualified for the World Cup, of course. I mean, it's great for some of these guys to represent their country again. It sort of brings up that sense of pride. But from an NBL point of view, it's just been a massive pain in the ass, quite frankly.
It stunk, Joe.
It's been terrible.
And, and because you can't play games during FIBA, what they, in my mind, and I don't know all the details, so they could shoot this down, but they should have just gone Wednesday, Friday, get it done and started the Grand Final series on Saturday or Sunday last week. Get it done. Great for those players. And, anytime you put on the green and gold, it's a whole lot of pride. And for those guys that played well, sure, you're playing against Kazakhstan, but it doesn't really matter when you're involved. Yeah,
shout out Todd Blanchfield, 31 points in their most recent game. And also just not Australian, Australian focused, I suppose, but South Sudan qualified for the World Cup, their very first time of trying, the very first African nation to do so. But they are packed with NBL players. Sunday, Bulkwal, Majokdan, all those guys.
How good.
I'm so pleased for them. It's amazing.
Oh, and they'd have so much pride being able to go and do that as well.
It's amazing sitting down. I sat down with Sunday to talk about how they went in their first round of World Cup qualifiers, and I had goosebumps talking about just what it meant to him, to his family, his dad especially. It was, really special.
Well, and what they're doing in the NBL, representing their country here and giving people a pathway to be able to aim to become professional basketballers. They're really setting that tone.
It's fantastic. We've obviously talked about my experience at NBA All-Star Weekend.
Yep.
Let's talk about the game itself, though. It's sort of the worst kept secret ever that no one plays defence anymore. It's just a bit of fanfare. It's nothing particularly serious. I know you hate it. How do you get back? What needs to happen, and do you think anything actually will happen?
Something has to happen because they put out their ratings, the worst ratings, because no one wants to be able to watch it. They need to turn this into the Americans versus the rest of the world. That's the only thing that can save this game. And what'll happen, the only reason why they won't do it,
I bet there's way too much pride on the line from an American.
The Americans are going to get their ass kicked. They will get it handed to them because of the rest of the world. What they do is they've got pride in going out and competing. And, the dream team go on and take on all the individual countries and beat up on everybody. When you pull that talent, they're going to take care of them. And because they play harder and they will be into it and the Americans will sort of fluff around, it's the only way. It won't happen. We should throw this to my man Chuck and Shaq over there, because, they know. America can't beat the rest of the world. Maybe those guys could have, but not these.
You just reminded me, they were broadcasting from Vivint Arena in Salt Lake, and Shaq had the whole crowd singing happy birthday to Chuck, actually, at one point. It was pretty funny.
We love them both.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. Let's talk WNBL. The final round of the regular season is almost upon us. The top two teams have been decided.
Yep.
The Fire and the Flyers. There's a bit of a mouthful there. Who finishes on top? They face off on Saturday.
I think Townsville, who have won 10 in a row, just need to win one more game and they're guaranteed top spot.
Okay,
so
there you go.
you would think they're probably going to get that done. Southside had a really big game against the Boomers, looked good. And to my surprise, they swept the Boomers with all the talent that the Boomers have got. So they're going to finish third. And well done to Perth. They had a huge win against Bendigo. They absolutely slapped Bendigo.
So that was my next question, because Bendigo were the front runners early.
For a long time.
Can they still squeeze into the top 4?
It's highly unlikely. It won't happen because Perth just need to win one game, and I think they're on the road against Adelaide and also Canberra, so the 2 bottom teams. So they're going to get that done. Well done to Perth for being able to fight back and be able to make that top 4.
I love the fact that it's sort of gotten a little bit juicy at this point,
yeah.
the business end of the season.
What about Melbourne and Southside in the first round? Imagine the bit of passion in that game.
It would be a lot of fun. Steph Talbot, friend of the program, feels so broken for her. She's done her ACL. She just signed with the LA Sparks and is now out for the WNBA season. So shout out to Steph. That was hard to watch.
Really hard to watch, and she's a legend. I think she's the best player in the WNBL. So ready for another big season, and then obviously it hurts with the Opals as well. So really, really sad, but she'll come back bigger and stronger.
Let's hope so. I want to talk about your situation within the WNBL as well. Obviously, I've been away for a couple of weeks. Lots has happened in that time. A little bit more of the details have started to come out. I know we haven't had too much of a chance to talk about it, but are you allowed to say anything else now? Because there are some more details. There are quotes that have come out that have been sort of changed by the club to take your name out of it in particular, and maybe things just manipulated a little bit perhaps, but are you allowed to talk about this in any more detail at the moment? And I guess, how do you feel at the moment?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, litigation started against the Flames. I mean, things like this are disappointing because, when you're coaching players, you want to try and make them the best they can. And, shout out to Emma Clark, who, it's on the Flames socials of pointing me out for helping her. And, and then this was after I was stood down, and then obviously somebody didn't get the memo, and then they changed the direct quote to take my name out of it. So disappointing for those sort of things, but no, I can't really say too much more. It'll all come out. I'm looking forward to that.
Glad the season's just about done in that case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Done. Ready to move on.
Can't imagine. Hopefully it's resolved soon. We are going to move on as well. Time now for Points Made. Thanks to UPCOZ, we are talking the NBL Championship Series, the Sydney Kings and the New Zealand Breakers. It is 1 versus 2 on the ladder. Apart from a little bit of a halt in momentum because of the FIBA window, we are ready, we are excited. Dee, I'll come to you first. What is the first thing that you are thinking about when you think about the Kings versus the Breakers?
I'm wondering who's going to stop Barry Brown for the Kings. Who can guard him in ISO situations? Who can pick him up in transition? Who can stop his movement off the ball? Now, that's going to probably come down to Derek Walton Jr. somewhat, but primarily I think it's going to be the case of Justin Simon, who should have been in running for the Defensive Player of the Year. But the only problem is, Hammer, if you focus on Barry Brown Jr. too much, you've got Brantley, who also is going to have to be guarded by Justin Simon. So some of the Kings' defensive liabilities, I think, may be exposed in this series. But, boy, they also present some problems for the Breakers. So I'm not sure how you see it, but initially that's my perspective.
So who are you tipping, mate? Who are you tipping in game 1 in the
Let's
series?
not get to that yet. Jesus, can you speak first and let me warm up a little bit?
Jeez, you sound like my wife. All right, I've got. I'm going to go straight for the point. I actually think that the Breakers can win game 1, and I'm going to tell you why, D. They've got 5 players in double figures, just like the Kings have. Now, the Kings deserve to be favourites for this series. They've been the best team in the league, and they're the reigning champs. So it's theirs to be able to lose, in my opinion. But the Breakers, they're 11-3 on the road. They're not scared of going on the road. And what they bring is they bring a whole lot of offense, but their defense and their mobility and toughness is going to trouble the Kings. What I like is Brantley and Pardon being able to do it in the front court, because I see what they can do from a defensive perspective with their athleticism against players like Cooks. The other thing that I like is their backcourt defensively with McDowell White and Isaiah Liafa as well. Both really good defensive player against the pick and rolls to be able to defend Walton Jr. as well, and also Vasilovic. So I think it's going to be a tough game. I'm actually going to predict that New Zealand win game 1 and then the Kings fight back and win game 2 because the Kings play better, I think, on the road than they do at home. So what do you think about that?
That in no way is that happening. That's ambitious of you, but that's not happening at all. Here's another problem the Kings have, I believe, though, Hammer, is Suarez and Jordy Hunter, they've got to play this series. They were not good the last series, and they can't afford to be like they were then in this series. As you said, New Zealand are tough up front. And also, Abercrombie plays bigger than you think. He does some work down in the paint. Also, he's a good rebounder. He's long, and he's still got enough athleticism to worry people. You have to deal with his physical presence. So if Hunter and Suarez don't show up, that's a lot of pressure on that man right there, ex-Cooks. And how's his body going to hold up over a 5-game series, Hammer? That is going to be the big question for the Kings. Now, also, DJ Vasiljevic, he's got to shoot the ball. He's got to shoot the ball well and provide some proficient outside perimeter attack for the Kings. And I think that will go a long way towards helping them go back-to-back.
I think a bit of an X factor for New Zealand in this series is Rob Lowe coming off the bench. Now, hear me out on this, D, but the Kings traditionally play with such a deep drops. So if you've got guards getting in there and you've got someone like Lowe that sets the pick and pop, they either have to get in rotation, someone's going to get open, but Lowe's capable of being able to knock that down and have some sort of impact against that particular style of defence.
So, Dee, we've got Hammer's tip. What's
Plus
yours?
4.5, I'm going New Zealand in game 1. Plus 4.5.
Dee, what are you thinking?
This is tough, Joe. I think New Zealand steal game 1. If they don't steal it, they'll put a lot of pressure on Sydney, and Sydney will know that they're probably not the better team by the end of game 1. New Zealand get game 2. So it's either going to be 2-0 New Zealand or 1-all going back to Sydney for game 3. And Hammer, I hate to say it because I've got to spend time in Sydney, and I know how icy cold get towards us courtside reporters when we pick against a home team. I think New Zealand are better. I think they've got more depth, and I'm going to go with them to win this series.
So can I just get this straight? Both of you are tipping New Zealand for at least game 1, and you're both leaning towards them winning the entire Grand Final series.
Yes.
Yeah, I am too. I mean, Sydney should be favourites. I just think this matchup is going to create some problems for Sydney. I don't think Sydney win game 3 against Cairns if they have Pinder and Scott in that game 3. So I think that New Zealand are going to be really ready to go. It's going to be a flip of the coin. We know Sydney have done well all year, but I think it's going to be an upset.
Cannot wait
Hammer,
for this
Joe's
series.
Been away with stars. And Joe, you've been away with stars in your eyes, hanging out with all the big-time celebrities in Salt Lake City and Park City, Vegas, and LA. But while you're away, I accurately predicted the result of a game. So, I'm on a hot streak.
Don't forget Phoenix as well, mate.
Yeah, don't forget
She was there
Phoenix.
too. She thinks she was. Yeah.
Hammer, come on now.
Maybe she was.
Let's talk NBA just very, very quickly. Mike Brown, Sacramento Kings coach, has come out and stated the obvious, really, the fact that the NBA season only truly begins after the All-Star break. He said good teams will surge, the bad teams will drop away. What he did say, though, is that because of their position, he said that they are now the hunted. And yes, okay, they're third in the West, but it's the Sacramento Kings. Is he not putting himself in the position of, like, the Milwaukee Bucks by saying that?
He has to say that, Joe. He has to say that. He's saying it to his team. He lets them know that this is exactly what's happened. People like yourself are going to write them off for this part of the season and they're just going to crumble. That's what he's sending the message to his players to say, we're the hunted. You better get ready because we're not going to let that happen. He's motivating his team. I like it.
First of all, I guarantee you within an hour of that quote coming out, he received a call from Adam Silver. Don't you ever say anything like that again. and it decrease the significance of our entire season. Yeah, but we do know it's true, but I hate to see it. I think teams should play it out. And this whole quote is part of the problem right now in the NBA, compartmentalizing the importance of certain parts of the season. Hammer, you probably would have enjoyed this type of schedule. You could have sat out 2-3 weeks at a time, going down to Geelong, done whatever you needed to do, then come back up to Brisbane and played a couple of games back in 92, 93. But I would have been playing every game. And these guys have to take more pride. I know I'm branching off into a different subject here, but this is about the load management started by the Spurs and all these other morons. Just play basketball every day you're able to while you're capable of it.
Well, Dee, we spoke about it last week with load management and what we think about it, but I love the fact that Anthony Edwards came out, he backed us up, he must have been watching the show, and he was challenging everybody else not to take days off and to get out there and earn their money. You've got to love a young fella thinking like that, bit of old school.
Exactly. And my attitude, Hammer, was if I wasn't signed by a pro team, I'd be playing basketball every day as it was. So I never dreaded going to well, I'm not going to go that far with the lie. I did dread some days under certain coaches. But for the most part, I did enjoy going to practice every day and just hooping.
Love it. Love your work, Dee. We're running out of time. That's all we've got time for. But as always, good to chat, and we will catch you again next week.
All right. See you guys.
Good on you, mate.
All right, thanks to 2K23, we have a special in-depth now with one of Davidson's finest, Hammer. D-Rap joins us.
One of? He said he is the finest. Steph who?
D, how you doing? You keeping Brizzy in check up there?
Very well, Joe. Welcome back to the show. You got your early zinger in, so good to see you again, JoJo.
Likewise, we are talking NBL Free Agency. Who's the first person, the biggest name that comes to mind when I say free agency for this coming season?
It'd have to be Keanu Pender, Hammer. There's no doubt in my mind he is going to be the biggest draw card. He's going to be a perennial MVP candidate for as long as he stays in this league for the next 5 to 7 years. And I just don't think there is a bigger target out there. He's going to command a lot of money, and he can change the fortunes of your franchise immediately. He is a high-impact player, great athleticism, and it's unbelievable how he's changed the conversation about his place in the NBL.
No doubt about that. And, when I look at him, I think him and Hogue would be perfect in Perth. I think just the combination with Bryce Cotton, the other pieces they've got, Hogue being that three-point shooter, and then the motor of Pinder being able to give them something they haven't had for a long period of time. Someone who doesn't really want to go outside the paint and wants to continue to attack and rebound and play with that sort of urgency. I think it'd be a good story, him going back. But listen to this too, D, is their biggest problem right now is Blanchfield and Norton. We know that because they take up a huge part of their salary cap. Both are contracted for next year. I think they need to start doing some deals. I think Blanchfield, he obviously wouldn't want to be sitting there. We've seen he dropped 30 for the Boomers. He knows he's still capable. I think someone like Illawarra needs to be able to make a play, and maybe Perth have to contribute to his salary to get out of that, both teams win. The other one is Mitch Norton. Obviously, John Riley's made his point about these guys not part of their future, not going to be able to play. And that's not wrong from John Riley, but it's also not wrong from these guys wanting to be able to move on. Mitch Norton with the same terms and conditions to Tassie, because we know that Scott Roth loves him.
That's interesting. Going back to Keanu Pinder, though, I'm surprised that either of you think he'll be in Australia. I was talking to 40 halfway through the season. He was already planning to not have him for next season, knowing that he's going to command much more money than the Taipans can afford.
Yeah, that's Perth.
We'll see what happens, but I can see him playing overseas.
He could too.
Jason Kadee, Hammer, what's the latest?
Well, it was interesting. When we listened to Justin Schuller last week, he didn't bring up Jason Kadee. He brought up a whole lot of other players. And I would have thought that Kadee, he was great this year. I thought, on and off the court, he's that veteran leader that can get it done, but just brings a sense of purpose as well. It doesn't sound like the Brisbane Bullets are going to be going after him. It doesn't sound like he's a priority. Big surprise to me, but I could see a few teams that would be going after Kadee. I think Melbourne, I think the Illawarra Hawks, and I also think the Perth Wildcats, if they didn't have someone like Mitch Norton, could get him cheaper and could probably provide a whole lot more value.
Those are all good points, Hammer. And I just feel that you need to sign your most sensible, best qualified, high character person. And I think Jason Kadee represents that for the Bullets. This year, when all the drama was going on, he was the one that was kind of the conduit for everybody else in the organization. And it's funny because from an organizational standpoint, does he not have any equity we know the Bullets have struggled over the past couple of years, but he has done a lot for this franchise off the floor. So I would think that he would be a high priority. They've already picked up the option on DJ Mitchell, who I thought would have been an outstanding free agent also, but they jumped on that quickly, as they should have. Now they should be trying to get Jason Cadiz signed. I agree, though, about some of your landing spots. I immediately thought Perth, Jason's partners from Perth, it would be a great way for her to head back home. Adelaide would be good, but I'd also think about Southeast Melbourne with a new coach coming in down there, and perhaps Kyle Adnam. Maybe it's time for him to move on and look for another place to showcase his talents. It's all very interesting in this free agent period. Wow, there's a lot of movement.
Yeah, definitely. We obviously had Jace on the show, a few weeks ago, and he didn't put a full stop against the fact that he didn't want to be in Brisbane, but I certainly got the feel that he was exhausted after this past season, and it didn't maybe sour grapes were left in his mouth, I suppose. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's
I'm not sure, Joe, whether this is he's doing. I think that, as Derek said, he's got a lot of equity built up there, and as good as Baines and Sobey are as players, I'm not sure they have the same leadership capabilities through tough times that Jason
No, for
Cadiz
sure. But
had
if he is done with it, if that was such a traumatic time for him that he's ready for a fresh start,
maybe,
it is what it is.
But it doesn't sound like Brisbane are giving him the option of that. And I can understand if he wants a fresh start as well. But maybe it's a fresh start with a new coach coming in a different direction as well, considering what they've had to deal with for the last number of years.
Either way, let's hope he lands on his feet too. Friend of the show, as we know. Melbourne United, Rajon Tucker. What would you do, Dee? You trying to hold on to him? He obviously came in with sort of... Sorry, lost my voice. What did he say?
He was the best import in the league.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Melbourne United, D. Rajon Tucker. Would you hold on to him? He came in, he sort of said, I'm the best import in the league. He didn't really live up to those expectations, at least early on. He obviously found his feet, but would you try and keep him?
Oh, yeah, I'm signing him to a multi-year deal, Joe. Certainly, he put a lot of pressure on himself. He probably underestimated the league, didn't realize what he was coming into. But let me tell you, around the second week of December, up until the end of the season, he was one of the top 3 or 4 imports in the competition. He's strong. He's still relatively young. He showed an ability to score at all 3 levels. And I think he really enjoyed Dean Vickerman's coaching style. And that's important, Hammer, because we know not all imports jive very well with Dean's style of coaching. So I think Rajon would be a great multi-year signing. If not, and there's some loose change up here in Brisbane, the Bullets should be going after him wholeheartedly because he's the exact type of player that they need up here. Somebody with some grit, ability to make plays off the bounce, and just play with a lot of energy and athleticism.
And I agree with that. He was outstanding in the second half of the year. It certainly doesn't, with what he came out with, he didn't necessarily endear himself to everybody at the start. So you're sitting there, I had my arms crossed going, is this guy any good? But over a period of time, I warmed up to him. And, I think that he should be staying in Melbourne. I think Melbourne should be all over him because he played well with Chris Golding, played well in their system. And I think he'd play even better in the second year, particularly if they had Derek Walton Jr. type point guard. I think he would fit that mix a little bit better as well because he'd get his freedom to be able to do what he does. And I think he'd be outstanding next year wherever he is. Derek
Walton is another one on the free agency list. Someone we haven't mentioned yet, but will be the talk of the town, especially after the next few weeks. Will McDowell-White Hammer.
Oh, everyone's got very excited about where he's at. And he's just started to really mature. Still only 24 or something, I think. But he's just played with so much poise. His ability now to be able to read the game, particularly off pick and roll. He can get to the basket and finish over bigger opponents. He can shoot the 3 ball. We know he's got length on his defence. So there's going to be teams like, naturally, he'll be linked to Brisbane, where his family is, that he would be able to go back there and change that. Imagine Sobey and McDowell-White playing in the backcourt. As a local backcourt as well with import spots to fill. So a lot of teams are going to get after him. But he'll probably feel like New Zealand's done him some favours and he's been able to really flourish in their system as well.
Very true. And New Zealand deserves a lot of credit, especially Coach Modi Mayor, who gave him the ball, Hammer, and said, you are our point guard. go do your thing. And I think for so many years, people were unsure what Will was as a player positionally. And now we see he is a very good point guard. He can control your team. He can control tempo. And he does a great job of feeling the need when he needs to impact the game with scoring or creativity, whatever may be the case. And look here, you talk about him coming back to Brisbane. Well, I don't know how much money Brisbane are going to spend, but they're going to have to open it up because we know Sobey and Baines are taking a good chunk of money out of the budget. So there's only going to be so much left, Hammer. You've got to pay some other guys. Could they afford Will McDowell-White and like a Rajon Tucker? Probably not. But they need to make a big splash right now to get the public confidence in them around going again. The other thing is they've got two guys, Harrison and Gak, who are also free agents, Hammer. And both of those guys had good net ratings this season. The Bulls were better when they were on the floor, but you can only keep one of them.
Dee, we've got to keep things moving, but is there anybody else that you want to mention in terms of free agency before we move on?
I think we covered it all. It's going to be an exciting period, as I said before, and it's a real chance for some teams that didn't get into the play-in to make a move, Hammer.
And this is where some guys, their stocks are going to rise if you're in the Grand Final series, because this is where you get judged when it really counts and you come through at money time and, you sink or swim in these situations, and you just get that sense that somebody like McDowell-White's going to have a good series.
That is it for another episode of The Basketball Show. Again, special thanks to TCL Mobile, NBA 2K23 and UPCOZ. Hammer, until next week.
The Grand Final, we can't wait.
Is there anything...
Finally, it's here. Finally, we have to wait that long.
Exactly. Anything
Terrible.
in particular you're looking forward to this week?
No, NBA starting to heat up. Lots of good stuff happening in basketball.
Yeah, there
So
is.
bring it on. I can't wait for game one. It is going to be a cracking game one. Flip of the coin.
Friday night. Look forward to it. We'll see you guys next week.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sports.